Welcome to the Lowdown Mortgage Podcast, the show where we dive deep into the topics that impact the evolving originator. I'm your host, Connor Bartley. Bam! And joining me today is someone who has seen the mortgage business from almost every seat in the house, working as an assistant, a processor, an underwriter in a high volume environment, and now as an originator building their business rooted in trust, education, and long-term relationships. A big believer in working their database and having honest conversations early and starting to get into using systems and AI to save time without losing the human touch. Krista Eiden, welcome to the Lowdown.
Thanks, Connor. I appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm happy to have you. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I know people will get tons of value from it. And so I just want to dive in because I mentioned in the intro that you've worked in a lot of different roles in this industry and you've seen it from different angles. Do you mind just walking us through that journey and how the different roles that you've seen have kind of shaped the way you operate today?
Sure. I started in this industry before the market crash in 2006. I realized this morning that that's going to become a really quick math number and everybody's going to know how long it's been. So that's kind of scary. But anyway, so loan officer assistant working under two ladies trying to get bigger. I didn't know anything about the industry at all. I just knew I needed a job and I needed to make money and I was personable and that was that, right? So I started there, realized I really liked it, got kind of more processor heavy, as well as into the assistance, making, pipelines and things like that. I always liked the tracking end of it. How do we make the process more efficient, right? It needs to be better. We were doing so much at that time, stated, they were just one, two, we were jamming them in, right? So I had to learn fast how to just make it happen. And I really loved it. And then, like most people, I found myself out of a job and went back to food and beverage. But then my underwriter at the time loved me. Thank God she did, because she found me again and was like, I want you to process for me. And I'm like, process? I don't know anything about that. And she's like, yes, you do. You practically did it already. So I started processing, met tons of people in the industry, big bank at the time. And I was like, I want to learn more. So I went into underwriting. I want to learn more. I'm one of those people who feels like you have to learn all the seats in the house in order to really do your job well. I did it even with food and beverage, hostess, waitress, bartender, manager, right? Like, how do you run a business? You need all of these people to run a business and run it efficiently. If it's going to be a well-oiled machine and you want to do well, you need to know all the rules, right? So then one day when I was underwriting, underwriting was great because I learned a lot, but it's very cold. You're sitting behind a computer just saying no. I was the dream killer all the time, and it was starting to be hard on my soul a little bit. It wasn't me. And a big producer came to me and asked me if I wanted to help him because he at the time was doing like $50 million or something. And he's like, I'm spinning. I don't know how to, I'm going to start impacting my business in a negative way. You're missing things. You're not asking the right questions. You're blowing and going, right? How many calls can you take? And at that point in your career, when it's that busy, it's a charge, right? You're like, oh, I got it, right? Until the fires start, right? And then you could potentially burn your reputation. So he asked me, because I'm me and I'm very personable and I like to chat, and he's like, I don't feel like this makes sense for you. You're good at what you do, but would you like to do something else, make more money, get to talk to more people? I can teach you to be on the sales side, but also while helping myself make sure that we get all the guidelines right and everybody actually qualifies, right? So I want you to almost personally underwrite for me, which I did. And then we grew the team, added loan officers, assistants. We needed more bodies. When you start pumping out that many loans, you need people, right? You're only as good as your people. So he taught me the sales side, and I really loved it. You get to talk to, I'm a psych major, so I'm not even from finance, right? But people, it's all about people and how to connect with them and I learned quickly that this was really meant for me, and I started to really enjoy it. Now, there's parts of it that are hard, don't get me wrong, um, just like anything else, but I I really loved it. But learning the operational side really helped me, I think, with the sales side.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
That's what I would call just the blessing of perspective. You are able to be exposed to the other parts of the process and know what their job is like, so that I do think it influences the way you treat everyone because
oh,
you've been in their seat
absolutely.
before. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I know what it's like to get a crap file. You know, it's like, hey, buddy, I mean, really, could we have filled some of these questions in? I mean, do you even know if they qualify, right? Or you hand off a file and you don't send over, some kind of an introduction to your assistant. Like, oh, by the way, there's going to be a $50,000 gift. Oh, gee, thanks for telling me. I've already asked them for their bank statement 3 times. So those things I remember being on the other side of the fence. Now, for me, I would just pick up the phone and ask the questions and just redo the application. But not everybody's that confident.
Mhm.
Your assistant may not feel like that's her job or his job, right? Um, so yes, being respectful of your assistant's time, because if you piss them off, they're not going to do a very good job, right?
Right.
Sending over clean files for your processors and thinking them through, thinking a couple steps ahead of the guideline so that you know what your underwriter is going to ask, right? If you know you're going to need a letter of explanation, just get it,
Right.
right? You know they're going to ask you. I mean, I need a letter for this. I need a letter for this. Just ask them for it, right? The sooner I get ahead of all those things, the better the relationships with us on your team, right?
Mhm.
And then when you have a fire, they're a lot more likely to help you because you're not making their job more difficult on a regular basis, right?
Yeah,
So it definitely made it easier for me on this side of
that's
the
great.
fence for sure. Yeah.
And so you also had this advantage of working in a high volume environment early, and this comes up a lot on the podcast with other guests. Just there seems to be a trend of higher producing originators got started in a higher producing environment. But
Sure.
what did just being exposed to that many files and different scenarios, like what did that really teach you, and how does that show up for you today?
Well, at the time, it didn't feel like a blessing, but it was because, I mean, you're like me, underwater all the time. But think about how much you see. So he was closing at the time. Now, this is in the very beginning, $50 million. I don't, high unit. We were a median in loan level of maybe 250. At the time, it was probably less than that, really, when you think about it. Because Savannah in our local market wasn't totally booming just yet. So first time home buyers were buying, 150, $200,000 loans still, right? Which that's gone now. But so we had to do a lot of units to make $50 million in business, right?
Yeah.
So, and those are only the ones that closed. So think about how many of those we had to talk to that didn't qualify, that we didn't win rate, that we didn't fit with, and that just decided they were out, right? So you're talking to, I mean, 6 or 7 at a minimum each of us a day. And that's not even all the applications that would come in, right? You get 10 applications, you can't talk to them all necessarily, or at least well. Different types of personalities. They have 580 credit scores, 800 credit scores, 6-figure clients, $30,000 clients, first time home buyers, investors. I have, S corps and partnerships to, I don't even know how to pull my pay stub, right? You're just, you have this plethora of people to talk to. So you get to pivot and figure out how to best fit with all of these people and win, right? I mean, we're all salesmen. We like to win, right? So if you're winning over a conversation and you feel good and they feel good, you're like, oh yeah, this is in the bag. I'm going to have this in a minute. Then you talk to your real estate agent. It feels good, right? So not only do you get those personalities to fit and get the business in, but now you've seen all the guidelines and all the potential fails and how to win, right? When your real estate agent calls you and is like, I talked to such and such and they said no, but I want a second opinion. and you can make that file work and you can give them a win and your client a win, I mean,
Huge.
it's huge, right?
Yeah.
You get that by at bats, by finding, okay, so what were they trying to do? Oh, yeah, you can't do that. But what if we do this, right?
Mhm.
Oh, you're in your 60s? Oh, how much money you got in your 401k? Maybe we should start a distribution. You learn that quickly. If you're green and you're just trying to work with what they're giving you and you haven't saw it all, you're only as good as what you know. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
So get that many at bats. It's so much easier to turn a file into a yes, you
Love
know?
it. And so as you've kind of transitioned into this role of going about it on your own, something that really struck me in just getting to know you prior to getting onto the podcast is that you are already very intentional about working your database and staying in touch with past clients and things like that. Um, what is that? Why is that for you? Like, why do you believe that past clients are, some of the most valuable contacts and often overlooked, like lever of growth for loan officers?
So I learned that pretty early on from my mentor. So the guy that I was working with, partnering with over the last 12 or 13 years, um, he was very good at his job and he still is. And one of the main things he taught me was don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Like we have to find, there's business to be found everywhere, right? And if we only get it from one sphere, then we're cutting ourselves short. And during certain times in the economy, when real estate agents are maybe slow, right? If they're slow, you're slow. So if that's all you're doing, how are you eating? How are you making money? How are you feeding your family? Right? So if you have other pockets like working your database and being intentional about watching the market, right? Over the last 2 years, we've seen higher interest rates, right? We closed people with 7.5 rates. Well, we're no longer there. But the phones aren't necessarily ringing from all of our real estate agents right now. We're hearing that there's a lot of inventory, but they have a bunch of listings and they can't sell them, but they have no buyers. Where are the buyers? Where are the buyers? Well, that doesn't help me. But if I circle back to the database and say, okay, well, all of these people closed at this rate, let me circle back to them and see if they're ready for refinancing. How many of us say, oh, I got you when the market's lower, we're absolutely going to help you refinance and we want it to be better, right? Well, we can't just say that. We have to do that,
Right.
right? Then we're not creating the level of trust. Why would they want to come back to us, right? Why should you deserve their business? If you're not telling them what the market is doing and that it's getting better and it's almost time or it is time, right? What keeps them from not taking the spam call and the junk mail that they get at some ridiculous rate that's going to cost them 20 grand? They don't know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to call them, they're going to go through the process, and it's just going to close. That's money that you lost just like that, right?
Yeah.
So if you intentionally pay attention to your database and other spheres, right? So that's just your database. What if they're like my investors? Okay, are you buying something new? If they already have a portfolio of 15 properties, chances are they're still going to sell and buy or refinance or cash out or do something,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not just for refinances. What else is happening in their world? Are you on Facebook and you found out somebody's pregnant and having a baby? Maybe they need a bigger house.
Yeah.
you know?
So when you are thinking about like that as you're very, I guess what I'm trying to say is you're very intentional about that at the beginning, which is rare from some of my conversations that I've had over, I mean, I guess it's no secret that loan officers aren't great at working their database. But how has, thinking about your database further down the road and those conversations, how has that influenced the middle, like the way you follow up, the way, and even the client experience from the beginning?
Well, so in the middle, right? I'm finding that that's where I'm going to need some help with the AI world,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm a millennial. We tend to take a little time to get to the technology piece, right? It, I have to do it, right? It's going to make it easier for you to find. I don't. I shouldn't be weeding through all of those leads, right? There should be something that can make it easier, and then an intentional touch point, but with a humanistic touch. That's the secret. I feel like I'm trying to find because we've all had CRMs. I don't know how anybody else feels about CRMs, but I personally, they make me nuts. I hate
Yeah,
them.
you're in sales. You hate them, right? Yeah.
I hate them. I do. It's awful, and I'm sure they're great. I'm sure they are, but it's just it's too much to set it up. And who has time to work in your business, on your business when you're in your business?
Mhm.
It's just I don't have
Yep.
time for that. And then it duplicates the leads and you have to export the Excel. I need somebody to do that for me, right? It just needs to be easier. And I feel like with all the technology that we're running into now, it absolutely can be easier. Um, but you asked a second question about the,
Just how is that influencing the way you even set up, a new client from the very beginning? I mean, when you're thinking about something further down the road, are you kind of setting that up in the early conversations, or?
yes,
Um,
yes, because not everybody's ready right now,
mhm.
right? So they're like, circle back, circle back. So there needs to be a better follow up. And I mean, setting an Outlook reminder is only as good as if you don't hit the dismiss button.
Right.
Like, so if something could go out to them, but that they're going to respond to. And I think that's the hard thing that we come into in this business. Yeah, everything can be automated, but if you're not adding something humanistic to it that's going to catch their attention and actually make them think that it's coming from you. I mean, let's be serious. We all get emails that we know are auto generated,
Hmm.
right? I mean, do you read them? I have like 10,000 emails in my Gmail account. It's just junk,
Yeah.
right? I don't read any of those. That's not grabbing anybody's attention. I don't need that, right? I need something, I think we all do, that is going to be personal. So what finding with some of the new AI that's out is that at least you get it'll give you the basics and then you can add the personal, right? When you set up those CRMs, all you get is this generic stuff, right? I want to ask Jean how her new job is. I want to ask Tom, how the family's doing. How is the rental at 123 Front Street making out? I have to be able to tweak it. And when you're setting up these CRMs, it's too generic.
Hmm.
It's like I'm just another number with getting another email, delete, delete, delete. Now, okay, does it put my face in front of them and make them remember me maybe when it's time to buy a house? If their current real estate agent didn't say, "Oh, I got a guy," and then they send you to somebody else, right? Like it's I think there's a fine line with finding, what is going to work and what isn't going to work. Automating us too much, you lose the trust
Right.
that people want to have. I mean, you're lending them hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're setting them up for their future. This could be their first home or their third home, but they want to feel like you care. And how much does an auto generated email care, right? So how do
Right.
we find the middle? That's my goal for this year is finding a place in the middle where you can still touch all these people with a humanistic approach.
Yeah. I've already felt it myself. Like, responding to or sending a DM to someone on Facebook that I'm friends with, but that has, unbeknownst to me, set up some sort of automated response within their DMs. And then
Right.
I end up getting like workflowed into like sign up to schedule a time. And I'm like, dude, wait, I thought we were
No,
friends. Like, what? Why
no.
am I experiencing this?
That
Right.
feels
And
so
so,
icky,
yeah.
right? That feels icky. And you're like, meh, next.
Right. And so I guess there is, to your point, there is a place where systems go too far.
Correct.
And,
You just have to find the middle of the road.
yeah, yeah, it's a tough balance because it's fun, right? It's like really cool to figure out and how do we
Is
build this,
it?
and
I
it's
don't
going to save me a
know.
lot
I
of
don't
time,
know.
but you
I
know,
would rather, if I had enough hours in the day, I would rather just pick up the phone and call because the response is always better.
right,
It is, I mean, who wants to hear your voice. You know who's going to remember you. You know who you're just sending a text to because you hope they don't answer, right? I mean, let's be serious. Like, there's a piece of that there, and you're like, well, if I get a deal out of it, that's great,
Yeah.
But it should always, it should be intentional. We should be intentional with our business. We should be intentional with our conversations,
Yeah. It's a phone call is always a good barometer of where you stand with that person. If
Oh,
they
for
answer the
sure.
phone with your name and say, "Hey, Krista," that you're like, "I'm
Mm-hmm.
good." If they
Mm-hmm.
answer and they feel a little like, "Who is this?" Okay, maybe they haven't saved me yet. And then if they don't answer and don't call back, and there's no, all right, well, I got
That's
some
it.
work to
Moving
do.
on. You're right. Exactly. Moving on. That was something else that I learned really early is, and I thought it was crazy. Um, my partner used to put every single person who called ever in his phone, right? James Smith, Tom Hanks, whatever,
Yeah.
I could probably not allowed to say that. Anyway, so um, I thought that was nuts. I'm like, how many contacts do you have? That's ridiculous. I don't need all that. It's the best thing that I ever did because people call me 3 years later and they're like, hey, Dominic.
Right.
And they're like, you have my, well, hey, right? Their whole demeanor just changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it means something to them. It's a stupid small thing, but most of the time it is the small things,
Yeah.
right? It's just those little teeny little small things that grab them,
Yeah,
you
those
know,
little touches that kind of make you different. So,
makes you different.
and something else that you mentioned that's kind of a cornerstone of the way you operate is to have those hard conversations early. Don't wait for things
Mm,
that you might know are going to happen down the road happen
never.
before you address them. So, like, how is that really, setting expectations? Why is that so important to you?
So I think all of us can agree that in our early part of our career, we didn't want to let anybody down. We never wanted to have bad news. Your underwriter tells you this is a dumpster fire and it's going to take a lot for it to close, or somebody missed something at the very end. There's some post closing audit. It never fails. If I miss it, my assistant missed it, my processor missed it, my underwriter missed it, it just, right? And now you're a week before closing and they're telling you this may not close, right? Unless you get this, and this. And you're like, I can't go back to my borrower and do this. Now you're just fighting. You're fighting with everybody. I need an exception. This is stop.
Mhm.
Pick up the phone, call them, tell them, hey, honest mistake. This is what happened. Fall on the sword. Fall on it early because they're already playing in the water guy and the cable guy and the mover, and your wife's 9 months pregnant and she's giving birth. It's a whole thing, right? So you got to fall on it early. It's so disarming to tell someone that you made a mistake and you're sorry.
Mhm.
It's okay. We're all human. Now, don't get me wrong, it still probably needs to close. You still got to find a way to close. But at that point, if you tell them that, I'm terribly sorry. I'm doing everything in my power to fix it. They'll be more apt to help you as opposed to making up some story, trying to get more docs, right? Tell your agent. You got to tell them both. You have to tell everybody that something has happened, right? Now, don't get me wrong. It's not always just when you're wrong, right? Sometimes it's just that they don't qualify. Or sometimes it's, I know that you really want this $400,000 kitchen. I do. I feel for you. But you only qualify for a $300,000 kitchen. Don't tell them that it works. Try to figure out behind the scenes in their due diligence period and then piss them off, right? Like
Mhm.
just be honest with them early. They will appreciate that. Some of the other honesties that I don't see in our industry is um, going over the why someone doesn't qualify. Like they just say it just doesn't work,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes I feel like I'm over educating them about our industry. Like maybe I'm being too nuancy, and I could probably pull back on that a little bit in some of these conversations. And I've worked on that. But like, why is your debt? What does the debt to income mean? Nobody
Mhm.
knows that. When you talk to somebody, you're like, oh, I'm terribly sorry, but your debt to income is too high. And they're like, oh,
What's that?
they just say, and they say yes because they don't want to sound stupid,
Yeah.
right? Nobody wants to sound stupid. So, okay, here's what this is. Well, there's your front end ratio and your back end ratio. Explain explaining to them the why, or why you can't use this income. I'm terribly sorry, but I can't use this overtime. I know it feels like you should be able to handle this house, but it just doesn't work with whatever the guideline is. You know, helping educate them through the pre-qualification process makes them feel like they're a part of it, as they should be.
Right.
Right? They should be a part of it. It's it's their money. It's their loan. It's their future. So bring them in and educate them. I try to go over all of the loan types, even if it doesn't work. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not to the nuance you feel, but how many times have you gotten a client that's like, well, I was already pre-qualified with someone, and they say, for 350. Okay, great. What's the program? I don't know. How much cash you're going to need to close? They didn't say. What's your rate? Oh, they did tell me what my rate was going to be. And I'm like, oh, did they? Okay, that's great. What's that? And they're like, 5.5, and I'm like, on a what kind of loan? Again, I don't know. So, I mean, is it 5.5 at FHA world? That's realistic. Is it 5.5 in the conventional world? Well, now we're talking about 20 grand in cost, and they just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary. I hate that feeling for them. So I try to go over, my mentor used to call it swapping recipes. I go over all the things,
Yeah.
I want to learn about their life, and then I want to talk about where their comfort zone is. And then I want to talk about what the options are based on their criteria. Yeah, I know that they have a 680 and they're going to go FHA because they have 10 grand. I got it. All right. But just because I know that, and I've been doing this for however long, 20 years, they don't care about that. They don't want you to just pigeonhole them into a program just because you say so.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That doesn't create a level of trust.
Right.
Why didn't you offer me a first time home buyer program? Right? They didn't even ask me if I'm a first time home buyer. Where's all my stuff? Right? I want my money. I'm terribly sorry, but that doesn't work for you because most of these programs are income based. And here's why. This program's in this area, this program's in this area. You don't want your conversations to be an hour and a half long, but people like options, and they want to know why they don't have any more than just one.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a great point, because if they find out something from someone else, then it erodes all the trust you've built.
Right.
And then you've got to go back and, even though you had the best of intentions and you knew where things would end up eventually and all of that, now they felt like you were holding something back from them, like you were hiding something. Why would you do that? And suddenly there's this, I don't know, doubt that creeps in about using you anymore. And maybe we should talk to somebody else. And now it's slipping away. And so it's a great point.
Well, and it doesn't even matter at that point what if you put time and effort into them and helping them, educate them just a little bit, and making them feel like they're a part of the process and that they do have options, they'll, aside from just winning their business and their trust, it's less about the rate and the cost.
Yeah.
You're giving them a service level where they feel confident that you're behind them and that you have their back. And that guy might have given them an eighth less, or they might have given them a free appraisal or whatever it is, but you're adding value that doesn't have a dollar amount on it.
Yeah. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Is when you're thinking about the future of that relationship, it impacts the way you deal with it now, and the just the way you set up your systems and the flow of things and the conversations you're having. But so let's wrap up, Krista. As you think about the future and what it's going to take to be a successful loan officer, and let's just say in the next 3 years, what are things that you're focused on right now, or what do you think is going to be kind of ideal or necessary for a loan officer to really stay successful as we move forward?
Well, so we touched a little bit on incorporating AI. So that's like my big thing, really. But I think it's also important to look a little outside the box and be creative with other programs. Like I love non-QM programs. It helps differentiate you from the other guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's definitely plenty of us that have seen self-employed borrowers, you know, we're not the IRS police, they make what they make, it is what it is. We know they make more, right? We know they qualify for more, having availability for other products will help us stay in the game. You have to have more ways to turn the no's into yeses. I don't know how many, there's so many avenues in the mortgage world. Because I'm a broker, we're looking into commercial type loans. Now, that's going to be kind of a difficult road, because a commercial rate is almost always from a bank going to be cheaper than what it's going to be in, like, broker lending. But having it available to you still makes you relevant.
Sure.
Right? You still get to talk about it. They might not get that deal, but you might be able to keep them in your circle, right? So I talked about how I like past clients and things. I love investors, it's my favorite. So I have a guy who always turns around and comes to me for investing. Well, if I lose him for one conversation, right, to talk to another human about a commercial deal, I might lose him forever, right? The commercial deal might not even work out, but as long as I have it, it could keep him in, right? So I'm working on, having availability of other products, ITIN loans. I already do a lot of bank statement loans, DSCR for like investors, but commercial lending for sure, and continuing to create a bigger sphere, right? So we talked a little bit about past clients, and using AI and CRMs in order to keep up with those. And of course, we all have our real estate agents, but where else can we get business, right? So talking to more CPAs, financial advisors, right? And I like BNI, or some kind of other networking group where you're not just getting referrals from our immediate industry, like insurance and real estate agents, right? People in finance. I mean, as soon as I walked into my new network, I had 3 or 4 loans, and none of those people were in my network. They just wanted to talk to me about what they had going on in their life. Oh, I think I want to invest. Oh, I need a home equity line, you know? So building a bigger sphere to pull leads from.
Yeah.
Those are my biggest focuses for this year.
Well, I think it's all great advice, and certainly something that anyone can take, a bit from, and pick and choose what's going to work best for them. But Krista, I just want to thank you for joining the Lowdown, being a part of this conversation, being in this community now, and just kind of getting what you have learned in your career out to the masses is incredibly valuable. And just thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a bunch.
Take care.
Bam! Bam!